It's about us being the best we possibly can. And we're passionate. And I trust Mark's love of me so that when he's blowing up, we're still good. And if I'm doubting that, I absolutely can go to him and say, hey, Mark, are we good? What just happened? I feel this way about. Are we good? And I trust his answer implicitly. I don't need to babysit him. If we're not good, he's going to let me know. So when he says we are good, I can move on. And that is the core of what I love doing this with him and excited about building even bigger and stronger because our cornerstone that we're building upon.
Welcome to the Persistence U podcast with Lizbeth. That's you as in university, but we're really much more of a community here. Lizbeth Meredith is an author, speaker, and online teacher. Each week, she'll be delivering amazing stories from survivors and strivers, all threaded together with a dose of persistence. We're so glad you're listening.
For sisters and brothers, I am really looking forward to introducing you to Mark Wendt and Gregory Wilker. They have a podcast that's about anything. It's called the Moped Outlaws. But what struck me when I was their guest is what dear, enduring friendship that they have had since childhood. Friendships, especially long-term friendships that continue to evolve, are such an important part of life and of resilience. And I feel like there's no end to what we can accomplish when we have the right people in our world. And so I really wanted to explore this further. It's not that uncommon to see women with, some of my female friends I've had long-term friendships with forever, it feels like. But I don't often see men having it, enjoying those relationships and talking about them. So I wanted you to get to know them a little better. I hope you're enjoying your season and the podcast. I am on a tiny break, a few more days from teaching. That helps me keep the lights on. Anyway, things are going well in my world. I hope they are in yours as well, and that you enjoy the humor, the friendship, and the just fantastic company of Greg and Mark. And if you choose to listen to my episode on their podcast or any of their podcasts, the Moped Outlaws, today I think we'll talk about how they got that fabulous name. Greg Wilker and Mark Wendt, thank you so much for being here, Moped Outlaws, for being on Persistence U today. It is an honor to see you again.
Well, our pleasure, my pleasure for sure.
Yeah, Lizbeth, you're really fun to hang out with, and persistence isn't required.
Thank you. Well, I was in such a great mood after I got to be on your podcast, but one thing that I just adore is your banter and your rapport, your honest, sincere friendship. And so it just dawned on me as I was listening to episodes of Moped Outlaws that the biggest part of, in my takeaway, is always the two of you as forever friends exploring the world together from your homes in Moped Outlaws. And I really like that. Can you tell me a little bit about, how did you both, because we're looking at friendship, just as in general, a long-term forever friendship. How did the two of you meet?
Well, it was through some mutual friends. Basically, there was a social group built around this restaurant called Mama's Royal Cafe. And at the time, some of that social group wasn't even involved yet, but we ended up hanging out together in a town called Mill Valley. And Greg's core friend group had built a kind of camaraderie that my friend Stephen and I were both very envious of and wanting to be part of. And so we kind of insinuated ourselves into something called the Bohos. And that was sort of the inception of it. And then over time, we evolved as men, and life, there were periods of time where Greg and I didn't see each other for years.
Okay. You met when you were pretty young, didn't you?
Yeah, in our 20s.
Okay.
Yeah. And now we're 60, so.
Yeah, that's a good long friendship. And as a woman, women, we really celebrate our friendships and we, nurture them and talk about them and on and on. But a lot of times I don't see that people celebrate male friendships as much. And with the two of you, it feels like that's different. You've been through some things together, So, yeah, Greg,
Yeah,
do you
the
want to speak
bohos
on
were.
that a little bit too?
Yeah, Greg, go ahead.
Well, can I tell my favorite story of one of our earlier experiences?
Everything's on the table.
Okay. So in our 20s, Mark had a date and he was madly in love with this woman and really had created a very big evening and event to impress her. And I used to be called Wilker by our boho friends and my friends. And somehow I pushed his area of comfort to the point where he spit in my face in anger. And and he always has felt, well, I think we've moved on from it, but for decades, he held this pain in his heart of what he had done and that he had been pushed to such an area. And to me, I found it not funny that I had pushed him to so far, but funny that I'd been spat in the face. That's such a euphemism, It was sort of a like, all right, got
Well,
that.
it wasn't a euphemism. It was sincere at the time.
Right, but in our social, like it's sort of a cartoonish element, like if you
Yeah.
were just generally speaking.
Right.
So to me, I thought of it as sort of a Boy Scout badge that I had checked off that others
Well,
rarely
Bert
get
Wilker
checked off.
really liked poking people in their most sensitive spots. And I think to this day, that instinct is helpful in provoking really good conversations. But
Right.
he's become much more adept at wielding his irkability in a way that's aligned with, all of us having a better experience in life. And that's what maturity does. But I mean, we're sort of skipping over like some really wild times. Like the whole bohemian thing was just like it sounds like. It was just men living in a house creating chaos. And before Greg was married, he was a fiery, I can't say the F word, but like there's so much mischief and joy, really, a combination of those things. And um, later on, we both worked at this place called the Video Droid, which was another, in those days, it was VHS rentals were the thing. And so we share this love of film and communications. And at one
Music.
point, yeah, and music. And at one point, Greg got involved with making a film called The Money Tree. And one of the locations for The Money Tree was the boho house. And we were all wrapped up in, oh my goodness, we're making, a movie. And it wasn't us really in it. Most of the bohos were not in it. But I studied communications in college and had always been around filmmaking. And that's also a thread in our life. And Greg's a film producer. And that's
Mhm.
continued to this day. He continues to, work on projects. And I'm ambitious about working on projects which have yet to come true. Another event that happened was we were part of, there was this radio promotion that was all about air guitar contests,
Oh, I remember those.
right?
Sure,
And
man.
so I forget, Greg. I mean, I know that there was an event. Were you actually in the band? Were you part of it? What part
I
did
was
you
in
play?
two of them. So
Yeah.
I think the very first one that these dear friends of mine, they're brothers, like Mark is a brother, and these other friends, we went to high school together. And then we all moved to Marin for various reasons. Um, and so this air guitar contest, we were the Go-Go's. And I was the lead singer. And
Belinda Carlisle.
yeah, and yeah. Later on, people came up and said they were wondering if I was really a girl or a guy because my mannerisms were so effeminate, and the women who did my makeup and hair, like they really did a great job. And
Yeah. And Greg had like this insanely like curly hair, like this rock star hair for sure. He still has it, but
well,
his cut's more conservative these days.
and
Right.
part of just talking about friendship, because I was contemplating this a bit this morning, because we just had Father's Day, and I have 3 children, and I was contemplating like this disconnect I'm feeling from what I know and have experienced of this wonderful joy of belonging and love and being a parent and children to sort of a despondency. And I was contemplating my friendship with Mark, and we've been through decades of experiences together. And it was interesting to hear your introduction because part of what I was, again, feeling this morning is this sort of disconnect. Like, is because Mark and I rarely hang out in person, and yet we are meeting throughout the week all the time. And so I was like, what is the friendship? Um, a couple things. One, the disconnect I realized even before this is mine. Like this disconnect from my children, this disconnect from Mark is mine. What the F is that? And then also was thinking the friendships, kind of what you were talking about earlier, Elizabeth, with you and your friends, are built because you go through the challenges and the celebrations of life with each other. And Mark and I have definitely done that. He has seen me in my lowest of lows, my worst of worst. And he's seen me, and just the same with him. I've been honored to hear his personal challenges that are ovens of fire that he's walking through and becoming the person he is now.
Right.
What I noticed is that through it all, I can see Greg's core values and core values of human compassion and a desire for humanity to find its way forward. And when, even at his lowest, when, he's the most frustrated or angry or despondent, there's still this spark that somehow something could shift for him. And then if that's true, then that means that all of the foibles, all the weirdness that we're all involved in as a human family, that it could shift for us. And it's no small thing that about 4 years ago, Greg and I were both in a course that had A Course in Miracles, this book, as its core curriculum. And so we shared that, and there's a sort of it's not even a hope, it's a knowing that something is happening for us all, that this isn't a futile exercise in human stupidity. It's actually a school of love, really. And so, I see Greg's core innocence really through all of his transgressions, and I believe he sees that in me. And we've built this thing where we talk to people because we are really curious ultimately, and we like talking about people. But it started out interestingly because we had done a bunch of anti-racism work where we really, really gone deep and exposed ourselves in this group that called the Remember Institute. And both of us were raised extremely progressive and had this idea that we weren't racist, of course not. We were childs of the 70s. But then when you really start to examine what racism is, and you start to get schooled by people of color about where people who look like us have blind spots, a whole new fierce humility shows up about what we think of ourselves. And so we were looking for ways to poke fun from an anti-racist point of view. Like the idea is we were going to really push people's buttons in the way that Wilker is so good at, and then raise the issues of how we all have these blind spots around how we treat each other. And at first we were going to call the show Cracker Jacks, which we found out later was not a good idea because basically what crackers are is people who crack the whip over slaves. But we were thinking it was funny, and we'd both eaten the snack as kids, and there's a secret prize inside. We had this whole thing going, and we were doing live podcasts at that point, and we had a friend who was listening to us on live, and we told, we can't
need a new name.
We need a new name. And then Greg told the story of how he got arrested on a moped and it narrowly escaped because they didn't find the contraband in his VHS canisters that were on the back of the moped. And so the person
When you were much
chimed-
younger, I remember you saying,
yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
In my
Yes, no,
20s.
not recent. Yeah. Well,
Wasn't a parent yet.
right. And so the person was, oh, just call it Moped Outlaws, and that stuck.
Yeah.
And so we're outlaws in the sense that we want to travel the road less traveled in conversation that both exposes our vulnerable and side and our own weaknesses, but then also invites people to be present with theirs in hopes that somehow collectively we can have the conversations that allow people to step into the bigger possibility for themselves and the communities.
I like that. I like that. What do you think, Greg? Anything to add to that?
No, that's on point. I will say it's funny. You and I were chatting about ChatGPT, and Mark and I, well, Mark really threw in a bunch of ingredients to AI and came up with our mission statement, which we now ride by, which really is slowing down and taking time to hear people and the road less traveled.
That's beautiful. That's actually lovely.
With a comedic bent, with this idea that
Yes.
it's all kind of like, and Elizabeth, you know, from all the trials and tribulations you've been through, that there's a kind of like, even at its the lowest stressful time, there's a kind of like humor to it. Like,
Yes.
it's sort of funny, like, how can we get to, you know?
Yes. And some people seek that out or, amplify that more, and other people kind of push that to the side. But I do believe even in the thick of the worst times, there's usually something that we can laugh about, just in the same way that there's someone that we have met and connected to that has helped change us through those trials and tribulations.
Well, when you look at the British sense of humor and then this history that a lot of comedians are Jewish, you see that out of these tough times are born some of the most comedic awarenesses
Right.
of our lives, and how, life isn't happening to us, it's happening for us. And so we get to have this perspective, and Greg and I have shared this, and we like taking risks. And, pandemic started us off on the road in terms of Zoom and Zoom pod match and all of these things to create the podcast. But where we're headed is we're actually going to get on mopeds and go out into the blue highways. And blue highways are the roads less traveled. It's the side roads off the highway.
Okay.
And we've done a couple of episodes where we went out and we just ran into random people and had conversations with them. And that is a really exciting, thrilling way to meet people and find out about people and have fun. And so we're gearing up to actually get on mopeds and go out into America and create new awareness of how we're all going through this and what we're experiencing. The tears, the laughter, the shenanigans, and hopefully nothing too tragic.
Yes. Hopefully no one falls off the moped.
Right? Or if they do, they fall into a banana cream pie.
That's right. Gentle, very gentle. I like that. That is so terrific. Well, I think point well taken too. It seems like you all work so well together, but it's a good observation that sometimes we just have to stop, even with all the working and the interactions, and just make it take time for that true friendship. So I am so thankful that you both have joined me today. And will you be publishing those coming up soon, do you think? Those moped?
Well,
Those
we're
live
working on getting the materials we need. We need a different recording rig, and mopeds are expensive. So we're in the budget stage. We're talking about writing a grant to the California Tourist Board to see if they'll help sponsor us, because, California is full of amazing, interesting people. And what better way than to find out from the back of a moped and a podcast?
Very smart. I like
Either
it.
way, even if we don't get that financial things together, this is a long-term commitment. And I want to say more. I know I've been talking a lot, Greg. So what I want to do is ask Greg, one of the things that people don't see on our podcast very often, but that you and I experience together, is we disagree and we often fight pretty harshly, and it gets emotional.
Still?
And yeah.
Mhm.
And what would you say about that in our relationship? Because otherwise I'll just talk the whole time.
I'm so glad you asked me this, because Lizbeth, this came up for me. That's important to me and my friendship with Mark. When we fight, I never feel that it's about Greg. It's about us being the best we possibly can, and we're passionate. And I trust Mark's love of me so that when he's blowing up, we're still good. And if I'm doubting that, I absolutely can go to him and say, hey, Mark, are we good? What just happened? I feel this way about. Are we good? And I trust his answer implicitly. I don't need to babysit him. If we're not good, he's going to let me know. So when he says we are good, I can move on. And that is the core of what I love doing this with him, and excited about building even bigger and stronger, because our cornerstone that we're building upon is fantastic.
I like that.
There's a piece here. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mark.
There's a piece here about when men mature and when we learn to unpack the parts of ourselves that we've alienated or we've pushed away, and we get over our ego, there a type of emotional intelligence emerges, a way to be courageously transparent with each other. And that skill set is so essential to men's evolution. And right now, the world is asking us all to evolve, right? And men in particular are taking it on the chin a lot. And, you know, I was just talking with my partner today, like wrestling and football and spitting in faces and stuff like that. Men, there's a love language for men around violence.
May I share something real quick that's on this point? So yesterday was Father's Day, and I was with my 3 children at this inn on the mountain here in Marin. And you have to hike to get to it, and they have a pancake breakfast. And my kids and I volunteered as servers along with this group of 30 people. And we're in the kitchen, my son and I, and there's this young man that I volunteered with again. He's probably around 11 or 12, Cy. And he's all, let's go, let's go. And there, I don't know if you're familiar with the Minecraft movie. There's this thing, Chicken Jockey, and everyone, and he went, Chicken Jockey. And I just started slamming around, and my son, and we're just like, yeah, yeah. And this woman in the pantry looked at it, she goes, there's a whole lot of masculine energy going on right now. And she wasn't putting us down for it. She was, and it was real. And it was masculine energy that was jostling and kind of ferocious in nature, but all good-hearted and fun. And we were about to serve about 1,000 people in 4 hours. So it was building energy for success.
I like that. I like that. It seems like community has been really important to both of you for a very long time, and it has, lent itself to your success. That is so exciting. And I'm really glad that you continue to have Moped Outlaws. And I see when I was a guest that you're really good about making people feel safe. And, if our energy goes over the top, like something like that. And I love that. I mean, it's good to just put that out there, but fun conversation, but what a friendship to celebrate. A lot of women that I know complain that their male partners don't have friendships. And that puts a lot of burden on her, that she would feel like she's the cruise director of the family and doesn't have the freedom to pursue other things because there's the weight about being everything to everyone. And so it's really refreshing that everyone should have their own friendships and relationships and, a community, not just one person. Thoughts?
Yeah, it's hard. The institutions that once upheld that in the American culture have been jostled about, and we've been siloed into different sorts of divisions of this person's that identity and that person's that identity, and that's bad. And I think one of the core missions, although it isn't really spoken about much, is for Greg and I, is that we want to redeem that. America is the place where we can all be together and be ourselves. And that is not easy, right? It requires a kind of graciousness, a kind of giving of gratitude and a willingness to see the other person, even though it doesn't make sense to you. And that's a core part of how we're going to make this country better. And the idea is, how do we talk to each other and listen to each other better? And we're living examples of that through the podcast, but it's not heavy handed. It's like, there's no American flags in the background, and we're not
Right.
talking about this or that, but one of the things is, because we're Californians, we come from a very, progressive background. You could easily say we're woke because we've done anti-racism work and we've been raised as Democrats. But Greg and I often talk about how the president of the United States is currently, there's weird things that he's doing that are good for the country. And this idea that we're pushing on each other as if we belong to the wrong club if we think this or that about each other. And I've come to realize that that is not going to get us where we need to go. And that's something that I think Greg shares. And it's really important that we learn to talk to each other and listen to each other from a heart-centered place. And that's what outlaws do. You're out there in the fire when, if you've ever been in trouble, and I know you've been in trouble, Elizabeth, one of the things that happens is you reach a level where people just decide we're going to support each other because there's nowhere left to turn. There's nowhere else to turn. And unfortunately, as a country, we're fastly approaching that situation right now. And on some level, it's the medicine we need, right? But on another level, we have to remember that we're all in this together.
And not for long. And that sounds terrible and morbid, but the fact of the matter is, this is going to pass real quick. And so what do we want to leave?
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Greg? I could
Well,
see.
just what I love that you brought that up, because I think if we incorporated our finite experience as a human being into our regular way of life, I think we would choose differently.
Yes, I would agree. I agree. I wish I always thought with that part of my brain that lets me to have some distance. I don't, but I try, because I think have to remember this is not forever. And so we want to make it meaningful.
The other thing that comes to mind, like Mark has spoken, how he and I have done a lot of work about our own racist elements. And just real
Sexist,
quickly,
too.
for anyone who's listening, for me, the easy way that I like to say that is, if I grew up in a family where the mom and dad were alcoholics, just from science, psychology, we know I would have trains of thought that are alcoholic in nature. I'd have habits that come from that. So once you learn that our system is built by racists, Thomas Jefferson and most of the forefathers owned slaves, even though they had this wonderful ideal of freedom for everybody, they still practiced slave master, scenario. And more, there's just so much documented information about the systematic racism. So we grew up white men in that environment. I'm sorry, there's some noise in the background. I don't know if you hear it.
We can't hear it. Just keep going.
All right. So, I forgot my point. I know what it was. I know what it was. So Mark and I have done a lot of work, and even in our conversations with each other, a lot of it is learning. When Mark says to me, you have this sadistic element that's really painful, and it seems like, painful for me. And I'm like, and then I contemplate that. I grow from that conversation. But currently, where I live in the county, I'm engaged with
The school board.
And I'm at a loss. Like I'm in this, I don't know what to do, because there's so much chaos, both from people who really want equity is the word I was looking for, and attempting to do things right. And there's defensive, it's just chaotic. And how not to contribute to that. I guess part of what I'm saying, Elizabeth, because hearing you, it seems so wise to keep coming back to beginner mind, keep coming back to, with all my experience, with all my learning, I know nothing. What can I learn today?
I like that. And to stay curious. And it seems like you both do that a lot in your discussions, in your show, that you just want to stay curious. And I think
And
that's
in
a
our
great way.
friendship.
Yes. And in your
That's how,
friendship.
yeah. And that's how you find the gold,
Yeah.
right? By not
Right.
knowing or stopping thinking you knowing,
Right.
speaking weirdly. What I was
Yeah.
going to say is it's listening, powerful listening is so important. And then not taking yourself too seriously. Like at the end of the day, I mean, at the beginning of this journey, one of the things we wanted to infuse in this whole process is this element of comedy, right? And we've
Right.
often talked about how cancel culture makes comedy difficult. And I was watching a Jerry Seinfeld podcast yesterday, and they were like, no, it doesn't. Comedians have always done this.
Mhm.
It's not, you don't actually get a laugh from holding back. The thing that's coming up for people that want to cancel comedians or can't take it is they are faced with their own, discomfort around the issue. And that's fine. It's actually important that they feel that and have the discussion with it, right? We need to have that conversation. And sometimes, like he said, the court jester back in the day, he could say anything that would make the king laugh, even if it was a little critical of the kingdom, but he couldn't piss the king off, right? So there's this line to this art. And so there's this art of conversation that is, how can you provoke people? How can you irk people to get them going?
Right.
And then still have a warm-hearted unraveling of what caused it and why it's operating that way and what we can do to improve it. And we've said this about Greg, but we haven't said this about me, which is one of the things that I have is a temper, and I'm easy to trigger. So it's an interesting dynamic. Like Greg likes to poke the bear, and I'm the eminently pokeable bear. And it's not his fault, right? I'm
Right.
not laying blame. It's just like when you learn about the way that you respond based on your way you were raised and stuff, you open a whole new realm of possibility and a whole new way to acquire wisdom and humor and grace and, courageousness, willing to have a conversation about it is sort of the hallmark of it. And, I love
I
it.
like that.
I love
And
it.
on that note, where can people reach out to you? Where is the podcast nested and located, and how can people get to have you both as part of their weekly journey?
Well, it's Moped Outlaws, one word, .com,
Okay.
where all of the stuff is hosted. And we have all the channels, right? We recently got our,
iTunes, Spotify,
and our
on
TikTok
and
got
on and on.
restored after we got in trouble with TikTok this week. So we're glad about that. But
Good job.
also, if you're an interesting person who would like to come and talk with us, you can email us at the hosts, plural, at mopedoutlaws.com. We're
And I
open.
would say, even if you're interested, because you may not think you're interesting, but I bet you are.
Yeah.
If you want to explore with us, check, ping us.
I
Yeah,
like that.
and last but not least, if you want to fund our Blue Highway tour, we're looking for that, and we definitely will credit you for forever. And then if you know Dave Chappelle, we really want to talk to Dave Chappelle.
Yes. These
We
are not
gotta
big asks at all.
Go for the gusto, man.
I-
It was so great speaking with you both again. I can't thank you enough for your time, and have a fabulous week.
Thanks for having us on. You are a true gem and a real sign of humanity's potential. What you've done with your life is
Aw,
a shining
thank you.
example. And it's a real pleasure to be connected with you and be on your podcast.
Well, thank you. Thank you both. Great to see you again. All right. That was so much fun. That was really fun. And speaking of, if I haven't already, I want to thank, they were talking about contributions for their project. My project is going to Antarctica. I'm putting my patron page on pause for just a moment while I focus on other things, because I want to make sure I deliver value. But I did have a dear friend and avid listener who made a huge contribution toward my Antarctica trip and subsequent ability to write my travel memoir. So thank you, Gary Schwartz, so very much. This was huge and game-changing. I appreciate the support. And I hope you all enjoyed Greg and Mark as much as I did. I think it's pretty fantastic. Their long-term friendship has evolved. as have they. And I think what they're doing is so much fun and definitely needed in a world where it's going to be good. I think at some point we will be able to listen to one another again and not feel so divided, and one conversation at a time. I think that's what they're working toward. All right. Have a great week.
We hope you've enjoyed this week's show. Thank you so much for listening. Now, to find out more, head on over to lameredith.com and be sure to hop on the mailing list too. If you've enjoyed this show, please leave a rating and review or share with a friend. And if you really, really liked it, go ahead and subscribe so that you never miss another episode. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of Persistence U with Lizbeth.